Welcome from the deep. I am Mike the Finder.
And I am Book of Brett.
And today we are talking about the 1992 film Army of Darkness. Now, this has kind of an interesting story. This is one of my favorite, cheesier, more comedic horror movies on my of all time list, right? As far as
I believe that
comic horror goes. As far as you go, you have never actually seen this until today, is that right?
Nope, never seen it. I've never been like, before somebody crucifies me, let me say this and then explain it. I've never been like a huge Evil Dead fan, and what I mean by that, it's not that I don't like Evil Dead. People go like bat crazy for Evil Dead, and I like it, I enjoy it, but it's not one that like I'm like I gotta come back and watch this again kind of thing.
Right. Okay, well, why? So here's the other weird thing about this, is you also have not seen Evil Dead 2, which...
We are going to call me out on that.
Yes. We're definitely going to do that. Yeah.
So we are going to touch on that. I'll remember that when it comes time to reveal people's secrets.
How is that a secret? It's not anything.
Because I can just see it right now where somebody's going to come, you never seen it. I see that coming in the comments. But yes, I have never seen Evil Dead 2. I have seen the first Evil Dead a couple times. Really liked it. I have seen the Evil Dead remake. Was bothered by it. But no, I've never seen the second Evil Dead. But I gotta say, I didn't need to see the second Evil Dead because the beginning of this one basically got me caught up to speed. And from what I could tell, it was the same thing as the first one, where they go to a cabin, they find the Necronomicon, goes down, except this time Ash gets sent back in time instead.
Well, yeah, so I do just want to say I was kind of on the fence about maybe doing Army of Darkness since you haven't seen Evil Dead 2. But I did know that the recap was at the beginning of of Army of Darkness, just like at the beginning of Evil Dead 2, there's a recap for Evil Dead 1. Mm-hmm. So I was kind of okay with it because, like you said, they're very similar. They're not the same movie, and there's a lot of weird history here that I don't really want to get into as far as like production stuff and why they did stuff the way they did it. But I will just say this. Army of Darkness is by far the highest budgeted Evil Dead movie that was made.
I can see that.
And it's because Darkman did really well. Universal felt like they were okay giving them more money to make something else. Have you seen Darkman?
No, I have not.
We should maybe do Darkman one of these days.
Okay.
But Darkman did pretty good as far as financially speaking. I think it was kind of critically panned, but Darkman did well. So the studio was already on board because Evil Dead 2 did pretty well and Darkman did pretty well. So when they went to make Evil Dead 3, i.e. Army of Darkness, they had more money than they had ever had for any of the other Evil Dead movies. And you can tell, just by watching this movie, you can just tell that this is a higher budgeted film.
Yeah, for sure.
So let's do what we always do here and get you to give us a synopsis, then we'll jump over to IMDb.
Ash is back in the year 1300 and finds himself in the middle of an already existing battle between good and evil, i.e. the living and the dead. There's already like some stuff going on there. And then he's looking for the Necronomicon so he can make it back to his time. And then he kind of just screws everything up and then saves the day.
Yeah, Ash style. So
Ash style.
If we jump over to IMDb here, you can see Army of Darkness 1992, rated R. It's an hour and 21 minutes. You know how I'm always bitching about movies that are too damn long? Hour and 21. I feel like they used that amount of time perfectly.
Yep.
Let me zoom that out a little bit there. It was directed by Sam Raimi, who would later go on to direct the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies. He also did Intruder, Darkman, a whole bunch of others. It was written by Sam Raimi and Ivan Raimi. Stars Bruce Campbell, Embeth Davids, And
Davids.
and Marcus Gilbert.
She's South African. She gets a pass.
Davids. I'm sure I'm screwing that up. It has a 7.4 on IMDb, which is much higher than I thought it would be, considering how this is kind of not your traditional Evil Dead movie, which is, I think, this movie's sort of divisive in the horror community, right? Because there are people that are like, this is awesome because it is more comedic, and then there's the other side of it, which people are like, this is crap because it's more comedic, and it is a far, far stretch from the first Evil Dead, right? The first Evil Dead takes itself really seriously.
Yeah, I don't remember Ash being like a selfish prick the way he is in this one. In the first one, so maybe I'm remembering that wrong though.
Well, part of that is the journey he takes on Evil Dead 2. He kind of becomes more, maybe pompous is the right word. Sure of himself, definitely.
I am the law.
Yeah, and Evil Dead 2, he gains a lot of that. Evil Dead 1, he's the thing that works about Evil Dead 1, and maybe you can speak to this because you have seen Evil Dead 1. Evil Dead 1, he's just sort of a regular guy, right?
Yeah.
And Evil Dead 2, he's had the experience of Evil Dead 1, although there are some people who say that Evil Dead 2 is Evil Dead 1, and I don't even want to go into all that stuff. But in Evil Dead 1, he's just a regular guy. By Army of Darkness, he has fought these people before. And so he's much more sure of himself and has the ability to kick the Dead's ass. So just real quick, we'll finish this up. A sardonic hardware store clerk is accidentally transported to 1300 AD, where he must retrieve the Necronomicon and battle an army of the dead so he can return home. So let's just start out with your overall thoughts here on Army of Darkness.
I watched it. I was not. I gotta say, I was not crazy about this one. It was really over the top on the camp, and I don't mean like just like fun camp. It's almost like they embraced the camp way too much. And I know it's a comedy, but I just went into this with the mentality of Evil Dead 1. And I just couldn't get around it. I feel like Army of Darkness is why he got cast in Hercules or Xena, which, fun fact, is the first time I ever saw Bruce Campbell. He's in one of them. I think he's actually I know there were crossovers. But yeah, the first time I ever saw Bruce Campbell was in either Hercules or Xena when it was airing on cable, by the way, not on DVD. But yeah, that's when, and I feel like this is where he might have gotten that role from. And so it was really, really hard to see him in this setting being campy and the way that he is in this movie.
There he is in Hercules.
Yeah. Yeah, look at him. Look at that guy. Look at him. What a badass.
Anyway,
Bruce Campbell's such a badass.
Yeah, he really is. Yeah.
But yeah, so it was really hard for me to see him in this and enjoy it. I don't know. It was too over the top for me. It was too over the top. It almost felt like Sam Raimi was parodying his own movies. That's what it felt like.
Well, I mean, you can definitely see the Sam Raimi style. Like, he would later go on to do stuff like Drag Me to Hell. And have you seen Drag Me to Hell?
I have not, but I've heard very good things about it.
Okay, well, it's sort of the same thing. It's like horror, but it's like really, really over the top horror. And that kind of has become his style, and I think a lot of that comes from Army of Darkness and Darkman.
It's like if Troma gave a
Yeah, kind of. I mean, I totally see where you're coming from, because the first Evil Dead takes itself so damn seriously that it's like a genuinely scary, upsetting horror movie.
And like I said, I'm not like a crazy Evil Dead fan, but I did really like the original Evil Dead.
Well, the original Dead,
I've watched it more than a couple times. I do really enjoy it.
The original Evil Dead is like, I think one of the best horror movies out of the 80s, because it's
for sure.
It's seriously upsetting. That movie is seriously upsetting, and it's dark and it's
that
serious.
Poor girl gets by a tree.
What?
I said that poor girl gets by a tree. That alone makes the whole thing upsetting.
The tree scene is for sure really messed up.
Yeah.
And it's the one thing that like really sticks out in that movie is like maybe over the top.
Fun backstory for that. I actually saw the remake of Evil Dead before I saw the original Evil Dead.
Really?
Yeah. Simply because of access. Because at that time it was just easier. Evil Dead wasn't really available on a streaming platform, and the Evil Dead remake was in theaters, and somebody wanted to go see it. And so it was simply a means of accessibility. And then I went and watched the original because of the remake. And that tree scene in the remake made me really upset because I didn't know it was part of the original, and I thought they were just adding it to make it like over the top and intense.
Right.
And then I saw it in the original, and I went, "Oh, it's just part of it. It's actually iconic." Which I've mixed feelings on a scene like that being iconic.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for me, my overall thoughts are this: Army of Darkness is a lot of fun, but as far as an Evil Dead sequel goes, or an Evil Dead 2 sequel, I guess, I think it maybe he almost would have been better taking a new plot and starting it from there as someone who goes back in time. But of course, then you wouldn't have the chainsaw thing and all that other stuff, right? But it almost feels like completely different movie. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's a lot of fun. It's very campy, and it does not take itself too seriously, which is why I think I enjoy it. But with that being said, it doesn't live up, in my opinion, to how loved Evil Dead is. And I think that's the problem. Army of Darkness is a little too light and a little too over the top and campy for its own good. And despite how much I love camp and over the top stuff in horror, it can be a little much, especially in this movie, right?
Well, and it's like I say, because you get it with a lot of, especially a lot of movies that are trying to like capture the vibe of 80s horror. They think by doing that, it means going over the top with the camp. And there's a balancing act when you're making a campy movie, where at a certain point it becomes too much and it's almost like too on the nose, it feels like. And that's what this felt like to me. It's not that I don't like camp, it's that they were aware of how much they wanted to rely on the camp. And I think that's where I have the issue. Like camp that like is enjoyable happens naturally, and it kind of just like it's almost unintentional. But when it's super intentional like this, it almost pulls me out of it.
Well, in the 80s, you got to remember a lot of that stuff that we consider camp now was really earnest. And like it was taking itself seriously, and they were like, "That's good, right?" And everybody went, "Yeah, no, that works." And then you watch it 30 or 40 years later, and you're like, "Oh, wow, that's really bad and really campy." And you're right. Self-awareness is what kills camp from being entertaining. If you're trying to make it campy on purpose, it can oftentimes end up like this. And I know I've heard stories from at least 2 or 3 different people where they were like, I didn't even know Army of Darkness was a sequel to Evil Dead because it doesn't have
direct sequel.
It's
direct sequel.
But it's like, I think that may be why this isn't as well known, and maybe it is, and I'm just up my own ass and I don't realize it because I'm too involved in horror. I think a lot of people outside of the horror community don't really realize that this is directly tied to that unless you've seen the poster or something. I've got the poster hanging on my wall over here, and it's one of the most iconic posters from when I was a kid that I can remember because it's him standing over the pile of skeletons and stuff, and the girls, he's holding this thing up and the girl's like clutching on. It's very like 80s fantasy style.
It looks like a Meatloaf album cover.
Yes, exactly. And it's like, even when I was a kid, way before I had seen this movie, I was like, I would like to see that. I don't know what that is, but I would like to see that movie, and it sticks out in my brain. And so for me, when I did finally see it, I was like, oh, I guess that poster makes sense. Yeah, okay, yeah, that poster definitely belongs to this movie, but I don't think it belongs in the Evil Dead franchise. Now, have you seen any of the Evil Dead TV show?
I am just now learning that there was an Evil Dead TV show.
Okay, so
I've just
now, like right this second.
Yes, that is
Okay.
that is a new addition to the reality that is the life that I lead.
So the Evil Dead TV show is Ash, middle-aged Ash, like having gone through all
Bruce
of these
Campbell?
experiences. Yes. And it's middle-aged Bruce Campbell playing Ash. And I believe he said it was the last time he would do it. They did, I think, I want to say 2 or 3 seasons. I kind of fell off after the first season because I was like, it's sort of the same thing. It's a little... The thing that makes Evil Dead work in the first one is that it's so damn serious. And that it's so hardcore and crazy and weird. And then it just... I don't know, Army of Darkness just takes it in a completely different direction where it's not bad, but it is not creepy horror. It is comedy horror.
Yeah, it's 100% comedy horror. And comedy horror is one of those things that I think comedy in horror works really well when it's extremely cynical and snarky. It's really hard to pull off when it's comical, if that makes any, like cartoony comical. That's why like Cabin in the Woods is one of my favorite horror comedies of all time, because it's a good horror movie, and all of the humor in it is super snarky, bordering on nihilistic humor.
Yeah, the problem with that movie, though, also is that it's very self-aware. It has the same sort of issue where it might be too self-aware of what it's trying to do. I like that movie too, but I feel like that almost falls into the same pitfalls of being too self-aware for its own good. But they use it in a way, they turn that into sort of a meta thing rather than Army of Darkness, where it's not meta. It's just like you either get this joke or you don't. We're not going to explain what the joke is to you and break that fourth wall. We're just going to do this joke and you're either on board or you're not. Mm-hmm. And so, all right, well, let's talk about specifics here. I would like to know how you feel about Ash in Army of Darkness. Just in general, because he's very different than he is in Evil Dead 1.
Such an asshole. He's such an asshole, and not in a what an asshole. More like you're a selfish prick and you don't deserve to go back to the present. Like that kind of shit. Like when he comes back and he's basically just let everybody down. It's like this is supposed to be fun. You're a dick, dude.
Well, okay, but he redeems himself by staying.
Right. Which brings me to my other point, which if I was one of those townspeople and he was like, I'm going to lead you, I'd be like, I don't trust you at all to help us.
But he's a magic man from the future that fell with an iron car and
that's true.
A boomstick.
And, yeah, I mean, I can see that, but like I said, no, I think there were a couple times where I thought it was pretty funny, but overall, I'm just like, dude, this is really over the top with the one-liners.
Well,
it's really over the top.
This is why I think you need to watch Evil Dead 2, because there's a whole piece in the middle here that you're missing, that he kind of becomes that person in Evil Dead 2. Like, he's not that person in Evil Dead 1 because he's a fresh-faced new kid who has never experienced any of this crazy shit before. In Evil Dead 2, he has experienced this stuff, so he's more prepared for it, and he slowly, maybe not so slowly, he becomes the Ash we know in Army of Darkness during Evil Dead 2. So there is a piece that you're missing there, and it does maybe step you up into accepting who he is a little bit more during Army of Darkness. But I totally get where you're coming from, because he is a straight dickhead in this movie. And so it kind of feels... I'm not surprised that's how you feel, because you haven't seen Evil Dead 2, and this is part of what I was worried about, that you haven't seen Evil Dead 2, because it's just that piece missing.
Right.
Okay, well, what did you think of the plot? Did you at least enjoy the plot?
I thought the plot was pretty cool. I think the whole, like, going back in time and then, like, fighting them, like, in medieval times is pretty cool. I was getting some Turtles in Time vibes, Ninja Turtles 3, from that.
There's some seriously Beetlejuice vibes in this, too. Like, makeup and miniature scale settings and all that stuff.
That brings me to the thing that I think this movie does best, and that's the special effects makeup. The special effects makeup in this is seriously on point.
Yeah.
It's really good. I really enjoy it. Like, the whole time I was watching, like the makeup on Evil Ash was just
amazing, right?
Awesome.
Yeah.
It was so cool. I can see where Guar gets all their inspiration from. But it was really good. It was really good. There were some moments where you see some, like, you know, like some slip ups. There was clearly a skeleton where I could see the skin in the eyes of the person wearing the mask.
Yeah, the part where he goes, you can see his tongue, and it's like it's real. It's just real weird.
Well, no, the one I noticed was actually just this real quick, like, push in through the army, and you can clearly see that it's somebody wearing a mask. Like, it's like clear as day.
It's also like, it's weird when they cut between people in skeleton suits to claymation, because when they're in the suits, like they have this really fluid movement, and when they're in claymation, they're all like jerky and stuff. Yeah,
that's also like that's also a lot just early 90s, like, low budget special effects
for sure. Yeah. So the special effects are done by Tony Gardner, and he is the same guy that did Hocus Pocus, 127 Hours. He did the Zombieland movie. He's done a ton of stuff. And he did that Hellfest movie. Do you remember the Hellfest movie?
I do.
He was the character designer in Hellfest. He did The Hangover. He did some stuff for Reno 911, Bedtime Stories, The Ringer. Wow, he must be really good friends with the Jackass guys. The special effects, I think you're right. It's the best part about this movie. And the set design. The set design is killer. It is killer. You can tell it's miniatures, and that they're just they're just puffing smoke onto these miniatures and then just zoom real close in with the camera and stuff. But it works.
Get the PA in there.
But it works with all of the special effects in claymation specifically. I am such a sucker for claymation, especially in horror movies. Yeah. And the claymation is awesome. It is so good.
Yeah, it is.
We kind of touched on everything I want to touch on. I knew this wasn't going to be a really long episode. Do you have any other final thoughts before we give ratings and all that stuff?
I feel like at a certain point I'm going to go back and watch this again.
You definitely should.
I'm going to go watch this again. I'm going to go watch Evil Dead 2, maybe tonight. Who knows? But I am going to go watch it again. But I want to go back into this knowing what it is, because I think that's how you watch a movie like this fairly, especially when it's such a huge deviation from even having just seen one. Like, even you've sat here and said, like, it's a huge deviation from 2.
Oh, yeah.
It's an even bigger deviation from 1. And so I want to go back and watch this again in that kind of, like, in that mindset. So I am going to go give this another shot to be sure. There's an Army of Darkness 2, isn't there?
No.
There isn't?
No.
Oh.
I'll look that up, but I'm pretty sure that no.
But yeah, I was not sure how I was going to feel about this because...
Sorry, no Army of Darkness 2. No.
Okay. I do, even though I don't go watch a bunch of stuff or read a bunch of stuff about a movie before we go into it, I do at least usually look up what kind of movie it is. And going into this knowing that it was a comedy horror, I was already kind of like, oh, am I going to like this or not? So I'm going to probably give this another shot.
Okay, well, I will say this. My final thoughts are this. You need the context of Evil Dead 2 and Darkman. Darkman is such an important piece to the context of why Army of Darkness is the way it is. We're going to have to do Darkman. Because Darkman is this, like, do you know anything about it?
I know nothing about it.
Okay, Darkman is essentially a 90s Spawn-style superhero movie. But it's comedic, but it's also really super dark and over the top and comic-y. So between Evil Dead, there is Evil Dead 2, Darkman, and then this. And those three things are all parts of each other, even if they're not in the same movie universe. So you would understand why he made some of the decisions that he made, I think, in Army of Darkness if you watch Darkman, because it is so weird and over the top and strange.
I would argue, though, that by applying the elements of a movie that is not even in the same universe to a movie to something like this, where it deviates so much, I would say that it might explain why the movie is the way that it is, but I don't think it's the right route to go when people are so used to a certain dichotomy already.
Oh, well, I mean, I definitely agree with that. But what I mean by that is it explains the decisions that were made, and you can tell Sam Raimi really wanted to try something different. And he already had this sort of cult hit on his hands. And Darkman did pretty well, but did you even know what Darkman was before I brought it up?
No.
Exactly. So I think what he was trying to accomplish, now I'm just pulling this out of my ass, I could be completely wrong. Somebody in the comments, let me know if I am wrong and explain a bit more of the context of Darkman to me. But I think Darkman showed him that he really could mess around with his style, and he wanted to take that style and a huge budget and use it for essentially what is Evil Dead 3. So I think it just explains why he made the creative choices that he made in Army of Darkness. But I do think you're right as far as it's definitely not the same universe. It doesn't feel like it's in the same universe as Evil Dead 1. So
no, and I think there was definitely a way of I mean, the whole concept of him going back in time to fight the Evil Dead is a really, really cool concept, and I really feel like if they had gone a little bit more of a serious route, you don't have to go like a fully serious route, but I feel like had they gone a little bit more seriously on it, you would have had a really good movie. Not that this is a bad movie. It's just, it's not what I was expecting, and it's certainly not up my alley. Let's put it that way.
It's so funny you say that, man, because it's exactly up mine. It's horror, it's campy, and it's fantasy. Like, it checks all three of those things for me, and horror and fantasy are two of my favorite genres. So for me, it's right up my alley, but it's important to note here that originally Evil Dead 2 was supposed to have Ash go back in time. So that is originally what they wanted the direct sequel to Evil Dead 1 to be. They just didn't have the budget to do it. And then after the financial success of Darkman, they were able to secure finances for Army of Darkness, which is where this whole thing comes from. So they finally had the money to make the original sequel, which is arguably why Evil Dead 2 exists too, because it is kind of a retread of Evil Dead 1. It's its own thing, but it also recaps the first movie. This is a weird franchise. It's just Evil Dead is just a weird franchise. And
Sorry, go ahead. I
was just going to say Army of Darkness sticks out like a sore thumb from it. Until you watch the TV series.
Would you say Evil Dead 2 is not as good as Evil Dead 1?
Oh, for sure. But that doesn't mean Evil Dead 2 is a bad movie by any means, because it's great.
My point is that's pretty much the traditional trilogy formula there.
Especially in horror.
Get worse as they go.
Yeah, but the weird thing is like
Star Wars being the exception.
I'm just going to skip right over that. The weird thing is it's like even the TV series has like a large fan base. Maybe not enough to carry it through a whole bunch of seasons, because I do think it got canceled. I could be wrong about that. Let me know if I'm wrong about that. I think it got canceled because it had lower ratings. But it's the same sort of thing. I've only watched the first season of that, and it's very over the top, but it's also trying to be scary. And for me, you gotta pick one. You can't be both funny and horror. Like
one always takes from the other.
Yes, and you can do both very well. This is a great example of Army of Darkness is a great example of doing horror comedy very well, but it always subtracts from one. And when you put more into the other, when you put more into comedy than you do horror, it's not going to be scary. And when you put more horror than comedy, it's not going to be funny. So there's a real thin line you have to ride here in order to be able to make this work. And to be clear, I do think this works. This movie is right up my alley. I love this movie for what it is, but in my opinion, it is a weird franchise because this movie exists. Because the fact that Army of Darkness exists. So, okay. The only other thing that I really wanted to bring up was Mr. Pitt from Seinfeld is in this, which is just hysterical. He's the wise guy, or the wise man.
Yeah. It's so funny you say that, because I spent the whole movie going, where do I know this guy from?
Yeah, it's Mr. Pitt.
I know this guy. It's Mr. Pitt from Seinfeld.
Mm-hmm. So, all right, well, what are you going to rate Army of Darkness from 1992?
I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. Because the things in it that I didn't enjoy weren't bad, they just didn't work for me. And I don't think rating it along those lines is a fair rating. I think something needs to be rated around the context of what it is. And as what it is, it does work, just not for me. Which is why I say it's not a bad movie. It's just not something that, again, like I said, it's just not up my alley.
Yeah. Well, it's weird you picked this movie. It was your turn to pick, and this does seem like something that I would have chosen.
I was expecting more Evil Dead, though. I was expecting more like the original. I kind of could tell. I was expecting some camp going into it. Let's get this straight.
Right.
You can't look at the freaking poster and go, oh, this is going to be a super serious horror movie.
Yeah.
Like, you can't do that. I mean, the cover looks like Conan and Kroll were mashed together.
That's a great way to put it, yeah.
And so, looking at the poster, you know there's going to be some comedic aspect to it. It's just a lot more than what I was expecting.
All right, well, for me, this is an 8 out of 10. This is fantastic. It's right up my alley. It's fantasy, it's horror, it's comedy. When you look at it in the context of the franchise of Evil Dead, this is weird. And it's sort of out of the blue. And it almost feels like all Sam Raimi really wanted to do was show that how he could work with a massive budget and make stuff work on a different level than just being an underground horror guy. Because up to this point, he has done mostly horror movies, and you can almost feel him trying to get away from that in this to show executives that he can do other stuff. So with all that being said, I don't think this is a bad movie at all. I just think that you have to look at it as its own movie. And despite having a 5-minute recap of what has happened in the previous movie at the beginning, because the beginning of Army of Darkness is the ending of Evil Dead 2, just like the ending of Evil Dead 1 is the beginning of Evil Dead 2. You do, even with that being the case, you do have to look at this as its own sort of thing on the level of something like heavy metal, or something in that era, like late 80s, early 90s, where everything's over the top and everything takes itself really seriously, but with a comedic twist. The moment you said, let's watch Army of Darkness, I knew this is how you were going to feel about it, because the fact that you hadn't seen it before, and the fact that I know you liked Evil Dead, but had not watched Evil Dead 2, and again, you may not feel any different watching Evil Dead 2 about Army of Darkness, but I knew you were going to feel this way about it, because this is just about the reaction I think that most people get when they watch this movie, because it is a weird-ass movie.
It's extremely weird.
And it is comedic, and there are a lot of moments where you're like, oh, like all the little tiny ashes running around. Like
actually
that.
Really liked that
it's
part.
Great. It's fantastic. But
really
it
liked that part.
It just doesn't belong in an Evil Dead thing. And unfortunately, the longer Evil Dead has been around as a franchise and the more stuff they make, for me personally, this is not, I'm not saying this is like just the way it is. In my opinion, the longer Evil Dead has gone on, the less of a fan of the franchise I am, because they chose to go in this direction and not fully embrace the absolute mastery and artistry that is Evil Dead 1. Evil Dead 1 is a masterclass in horror. It is beautiful. It's shot really well. The script is fantastic. It's creepy. It literally creeps me out watching that movie. And then you watch Army of Darkness, and it is not like that at all. Even if it is a fun, great movie, it is not like how this franchise started. So,
no, not at all.
All right, so if you guys like this, make sure you hit the like button. If you really liked it, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Did you hate this? Do you hate us? Hit the thumbs down button. But if you're going to do that, let us know why. Why do you disagree with what we're saying? I would love to hear from somebody who is a diehard Evil Dead fan, because
I wouldn't. They're going to roast me.
I love Evil Dead, but as far as I'm concerned, they get worse the further they go. And if you disagree with that, please let us know why. Thank you guys for watching. We super appreciate it if you got all the way to the end of this. And we will see you guys next time from the deep. Bye-bye.
Ta-ta.